I lay back and let out a long breath. Life as the emperor was stressful, but I had to admit, things were looking up. I was literally lying down and my reputation was skyrocketing on its own. Outside the city walls, surely I had spent the morning so angry he nearly went to meet his ancestors. But now, the Gene commanders were finally coming to their senses. My predictions were starting to sink in, and everyone in their camp was beginning to agree with the harsh reality of their situation. Earlier, a faction of the Gene army, including the commander Wanyan Zonghan, wanted a quick victory. From his perspective, it made sense. He had 150,000 mouths to feed. Every month, those men devoured 10 million pounds of grain. If they stayed outside Kaifeng for 3 months, they'd need 30 million pounds. It was the dead of winter. There was nothing left in the fields. We had already gathered the crops and brought them behind the city walls. Many of our people had fled south, and the ones left in the surrounding counties were practicing a scorched earth policy. North of the Yellow River, my people were still fighting back. If the Gene wanted to settle in for a 3-month siege, they'd need at least 5 months of supplies. For Wanyan Zonghan and Wanyan Zongwang, securing that much food was becoming an impossible task. In the history I knew, the fall of the Northern Song was an accident, a series of suicidal blunders by Emperor Huizong, Emperor Qinzong, and their ministers. If you looked at the records, their decisions were beyond delusional. The Gene army looked unstoppable, but they hadn't actually swallowed the northern provinces yet. This march on Kaifeng was really just a decapitation strike. The Gene were fierce warriors, but they were still human. They still had to eat. As I had told my court, their greatest weakness was their overextended supply line. They were deep in our territory. Every time they tried to forage for food, my people fought back. Even if the villagers couldn't win a pitched battle, they could harass the Gene, set fires, and destroy their supplies. This was why the Gene commanders were desperate for a quick end. But our defenses wouldn't allow it. So, they fell back on their old trick: surround the city, attack, and offer a fake peace treaty to crumble our resolve from the inside. They wanted to lure us out. Except, I had already slammed that door shut. In the Gene camp, Wanyan Zongwang spoke up. He agreed to stop the assault for now, but he was worried. Tom was on our side. The Song relief armies were on their way. He remembered the first siege earlier this year when hundreds of thousands of our troops arrived, forcing the Gene to retreat. Surely I pointed out that while our elite Shangxi troops were blocked at Tongwan, we had reinforcements coming from everywhere else: the south, Shandong, Huaidong, and Jinghu. They were all on the road. Wanyan Xin suggested they try to talk. They wanted to send an invitation for peace talks to see what we would do. Wanyan Zongwang agreed. He felt that if the resistance in Kaifeng was too strong, they should just squeeze us for money and valuables, then head back north. The tent went silent. This touched on a deep political rift within the Gene leadership. Wanyan Zonghan was a hardliner. He wanted to destroy the Song entirely. He was the man who had spent 9 months grinding down the fortress of Taiyuan until it fell. Wanyan Zongwang, the son of the Gene founder, was different. He preferred fast strikes. Hit the Song hard, take the loot, and leave. Both men were giants in their empire, and both were watching each other closely. Finally, Wanyan Zonghan spoke. He agreed to talk, but he wouldn't stop the war. He ordered his men to build 200 trebuchets within the month. He was hedging his bets. By the morning of December 2nd, the news reached our walls. The Gene wanted to negotiate. As the word spread through the city, the people pulled out the pamphlets I had written. They looked at my strategy against the Gene and realized it was happening exactly as I said it would. It was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. I had predicted their move, told everyone about it, and now the Gene were forced to play the role I had written for them. The citizens of Kaifeng were stunned. The emperor was right, they shouted. Even the Gene generals felt a chill, feeling as though I were reading their minds from across the battlefield. They tried to dismiss it as luck, but their confidence was shaken. The reaction in the streets was immediate. Which dog official dares to go out and talk peace? The people yelled. I'll kill him myself. No peace. We fight to the end. They weren't afraid anymore. If I could predict the enemy's every move, I surely had a plan to win. My reputation was soaring, and I hadn't even left my palace. However, the mood in the government offices was different. A group of officials began sending me petitions, using logic to argue for peace. They claimed that since we had defended the city successfully, the Jin now knew our strength. According to them, this was the perfect time to negotiate from a position of power. Were these officials stupider than the commoners? No, they were just looking out for themselves. For the common people, peace meant the government would tax them into poverty to pay the Jin. If the city fell, the commoners died. But for the officials, peace meant the status quo. The money for the Jin wouldn't come from their pockets. If I tried to tax the nobility, they'd use their Confucian values to attack me. These elites were rich and afraid to die. They preferred a shameful compromise over a risky victory. That was the reality of my court. But peace wasn't up to the Jin anymore. And it certainly wasn't up to those cowards in my government. Not everyone was a weakling, though. Just yesterday, Meicho had sent me a secret letter suggesting we take the initiative and strike back while we had the momentum. In the messy politics of the late Northern Song, there was finally a spark of defiance. For decades, Emperor Huizong had surrounded himself with opportunists. I knew better than to trust a word they said. My predecessor, Zhao Huan, had already learned that lesson the hard way. During the first siege of Dongjing, General Zhong Shidao arrived with a massive army to save the city. Things were looking up. But then, a self-important idiot named Yao Pingzhong showed up. He insisted on a surprise night raid against the Jin camp. Zhong Shidao hated the idea, but Zhao Huan gave the green light anyway. The result? The news leaked before the raid even started. The Jin commander, Wanyan Zhongwang, just sat back and waited for them. He crushed the Song army effortlessly. As for Yao Pingzhong, he didn't stick around to fight. He ran so fast he practically vanished from history. Legend says he ended up as a monk in some remote temple in Sichuan years later. He was, without a doubt, the greatest escape artist in military history. That one failure gave the cowards in the court the perfect excuse to push for surrender. I couldn't afford any clever maneuvers like that. Stability was everything. I also couldn't trust the promises of the elites. They had lived in peace for too long and developed a nasty habit of talking big while doing nothing. On the morning of December 2nd, right after I finished breakfast, Gao Qiu hurried in. "Your Majesty," he whispered, "the streets are buzzing. People are saying the Jin want to talk peace. Some even say the court has already agreed to it." "Oh, is the rumor widespread?" I asked. "Quite a few are talking, but there are others saying the court will never negotiate." Gao Qiu was fishing for my reaction. He wanted to know which way the wind was blowing. "What do the Jin want?" I asked. "They want us to send an envoy to their camp." "And what is the mood of the people?" "They're against it," Gao Qiu admitted. "They don't want peace." I shifted the subject abruptly. "I asked you to check the food reserves of the commoners. What did you find?" "I surveyed 300 households yesterday," Gao Qiu reported. "They have enough grain to last about 3 months." "Good. I understand. You may leave." Gao Qiu bowed and left, looking confused. He couldn't read me at all. 3 months. That number weighed heavy on my mind. It was early December. 3 months meant we could hold out until March of the next year. By then, the weather would warm up and reinforcements from across the country should arrive. The Jin hated the heat. They never fought in the summer. If we could just survive until spring, their clock would run out. If Wanyan Zhonghan insisted on staying, I would force him into a war of attrition. But I knew Zhonghan's character. He wouldn't give up after one failed assault. He was likely building more catapults right now. I had to prepare our defenses for an even more brutal round. By noon, the city was still debating the peace rumors. Then, the latest edition of the Dongjing Daily hit the streets. It was sold out instantly. Even women who usually ignored politics were scrambling for a copy. The headline surprised everyone. It wasn't about the peace talks. Instead, it was a massive tribute to the soldiers who had died the day before. In the Song dynasty, soldiers were at the bottom of the social ladder. Rewards were usually just silver or a promotion, basic transactions. Publicly praising a martial man was unheard of. Take the famous General Di Qing, for example. He was a legend who made the Western Xia tremble. But when the emperor tried to appoint him to a high government position, the civil officials threw such a fit the emperor nearly hung himself. To them, a lowly soldier shouldn't breathe the same air as refined scholars. They eventually bullied Di Qing into exile, where he died of a broken heart. By praising these fallen soldiers, I was essentially slapping every civil official in the face. There was an old saying, "Good iron isn't used for nails, and good men don't become soldiers." Soldiers even had tattoos on their faces to mark them as low class. But the Dongjing Daily was my voice. I made it clear, without a country, there is no home. These men gave their lives for us, and they deserved our respect. To a person from the 21st century, this was common sense. To a person in the 12th century, it was a revolution. I was trying to build a modern concept of a nation. Before this, people saw the world as all under heaven, with no fixed borders. But after years of conflict, the idea of a defined country was starting to take root. This crisis was my chance to unite the people. The headline worked. People started to realize that without these lowly soldiers, they'd all be dead. By December 3rd, the Jin were still waiting for a reply about the peace talks. By the 4th, there was still nothing. Inside a luxury mansion, the former official Tang Ko met with Gung Nanzhong. Gung wasn't just a high-ranking official. He had been the emperor's teacher. He was also a spineless coward who loved the idea of surrendering. "Lord Gung," Tang Ku sighed. "I assume you've heard what's happening." "I have," Gung Nanzhong replied coldly. "The emperor is acting on impulse. The Jin offered peace, and he says nothing. Now I hear the Ministry of Rights is building a shrine of loyal martyrs for those dead soldiers. It's ridiculous." His face darkened. Praising them in the paper was bad enough, but a shrine? For common grunts? "You are his teacher," Tang Ko urged. "The emperor is overstepping. He's killing ministers, letting his henchmen run wild, and raising the status of soldiers. If this continues, the consequences will be disastrous." "Don't panic," Gung Nanzhong said calmly. "How can I not? Even Feng, she was fired. The emperor is ignoring the Jin's offer. Tell me, does he even have the people's support anymore?" "That," Gung Nanzhong began, "is exactly the point." "I don't know about that," Gung Nanzhong said, setting down his teacup. "Don't forget, the retired emperor is still in the palace. If the current emperor loses the people's hearts, his father won't just sit by and watch." Tang Ku was stunned. "What are you implying?" "Lord Tang, the situation has spiraled beyond our control," Gung Nanzhong replied. "The emperor is walking a narrower and narrower path. When everyone is finally fed up, their loyalty will naturally shift back to the retired emperor, Zhao Ji." He was talking about the former emperor Huizong. The seeds of a coup were being planted. By December 5th, a heavy snow blanketed the city. I climbed out from under Zhu Lian's silk blankets. She smelled sweet, like a mix of flowers and warmth. "Women really are made of water, soft and fragrant." "Your Majesty, leaving so early?" she whispered. "I have business today," I replied. I dressed and headed to the Tongmu Pavilion for a hot bath. The steam woke me up instantly. After a quick breakfast, I left the palace just as the sun began to peek through the gray clouds. Zhangshai was already waiting for me outside. As we rode through the streets, I saw commoners rushing out to chop wood from the roadside trees for fuel. Jing Chao, my guard, moved to stop them, but I held up a hand. "Your Majesty, cutting roadside trees is strictly forbidden by imperial law," Jing Chao said. "Let them be for now," I sighed, watching the hunched figures clutching their firewood as they ran through the snow. "These are desperate times." "Your Majesty is compassionate," Jing Chao said. "The people will understand your efforts." Jing Chao came from a humble background himself. He understood the struggle of the poor. In the history I knew, he was the man who chose to jump off a cliff rather than surrender to Yu Fei. People from the bottom who finally climb up tend to remember who helped them. They are fiercely loyal. The city's management felt looser lately. Maybe the officials had lost their will to enforce petty rules, or maybe they just didn't want to spark a riot. But I knew some people weren't relaxing. They felt their interests were being threatened, and they were ready to strike back. Our carriage soon arrived at the South-North workshops. Several officials from the Directorate of Armaments were already lined up at the gate. "We pay our respects to your Majesty," they shouted, bowing low. "Rise," I said, stepping down from the carriage. The Directorate was the administrative heart of our weapon production, but the actual muscle was here, in the South-North workshops. This system had been built up during the reforms of Emperor Shenzong and Wang Angshi. They were fans of the old Tang dynasty systems and believed a strong military started with a centralized armory. Li Chong, the director, stepped forward. Your Majesty, this way please. Ministerly, I said. I've come with Lord Zhang to set some requirements for our defenses. We need to be ready for the enemy. Understood, Li Chong said smoothly. Whatever you need, we will do our best. Let's start with the trebuchets. While Wanyan Zonghan was playing games with peace talks, he was actually preparing for a massive siege. I couldn't afford to be idle. The Great Song war machine had to grind into high gear. Wanyan Zonghan had spent 9 months starving out Taiyuan until every single defender died for their country. He was a man of terrifying will and brutal methods. I wasn't just facing any army. I was facing the strongest military force on the planet. The Jin commanders were geniuses, backed by the best Han Chinese defectors from the Liao dynasty. Even the European crusaders would have been crushed into dust by these guys. I had to give this everything. We walked into the trebuchet workshop. By the Song dynasty, this technology had reached its peak. It was actually the Jin who would eventually steal this tech from us during the fall of the city, and later the Mongols would take it from them to conquer the West. Right now, I was standing in the center of the world's highest industrial achievement. Rows of massive wooden machines stood before me. It was a staggering sight. Most of the trebuchets on the watchtowers were damaged in the last fight, I noted. These need to be replaced. How many can we fit on one wall? If we place one every 3 zhang, Zhang Shai calculated, we could fit over 600. We don't need that many, I said. The enemy won't attack the entire line at once. What's a realistic number? 200 per wall would be enough, Zhang Shai said. Then we need 800 total. I turned to Li Chong. Can you do it? Li Chong hesitated. How much time do we have? 1 month. 1 month. Li Chong looked pale. That's tight. We have 5,000 men in the East-West workshops and 3,000 in the Imperial works. But the raw materials are the problem. What if we make smaller versions? A junior official named Wang Si interrupted. Small trebuchets would be faster to build. I looked at him, impressed. Then build the small ones. Large ones are too clunky for the towers anyway. What did you say your name was? I am Wang Si, Vice Director. Wang Si. I repeated. Is Wang Boyan your father? He is, Your Majesty. My heart sank. Wang Boyan was one of the most infamous traitors in the history of the Songjin transition. Right now, he was a regional governor. In the original timeline, he was the one who encouraged Prince Zhao Go to flee south and helped him set up a new government while the capital burned. Thinking of Zhao Go, I realized he was probably already gathering an army in Xiangzhou. Men like the legendary Yu Fei were likely joining his ranks right now, though they hadn't made their names yet. I looked at the weapons being built and made a decision. I needed to buy more time. It was time to write another letter to the Jin commanders, Wanyan Zonghan and Wanyan Zongwang. I needed to analyze the current situation for the Jin commanders. My plan was simple. Convince them to retreat north while they still had the chance. I looked back at Wang Si. A memory flickered in my mind from the history books. After the fall of Kai Feng, Wang Si was captured by the Jin and taken north. His father, Wang Boyan, eventually paid a massive ransom to get him back. I'm putting you in charge of building those 800 trebuchets, I said, locking eyes with him. Do you dare take on this mission? I accept your command. Wang Si replied without hesitation. Good. But I don't just want standard stone throwers, I added. I want them integrated with our gunpowder weapons. I wanted to bring real cannons to the Song dynasty. Combining artillery with trebuchets wasn't actually a foreign concept here. The Song already used gunpowder extensively on the battlefield. Even the Jin's famous iron fire cannons were just copies of Song technology. Li Chong and Wang Si didn't seem surprised by the idea. Your Majesty, Wang Si said. The Weapons Bureau already has some in stock. How many? According to my count from 7 days ago, we have 8,456. Are you talking about the thunderclap bombs? I asked. Yes, sire. That's nowhere near enough, I snapped. 800 trebuchets, each needing 200 rounds. That's 160,000 bombs. The number hit them like a physical blow. Li Chong turned pale. Your Majesty, that might be beyond our physical limit. Are we short on raw materials? I didn't look at Li Chong when I asked. I kept my eyes on Wang Si. Wang Si swallowed hard. The number is indeed massive. However, I will find a way. I might need assistance from the Ministry of Works. Whatever you need, you'll have it, I promised. You give me what I want, and I'll give you what you want. I like dealing with people like Wang Si. He kept things simple. Most people hit a wall and immediately say something is impossible. That's why they stay at the bottom their whole lives. The ones who rise fast are the ones who stop looking at the difficulties and start looking for solutions. Was our situation difficult? Of course. I was facing a hell mode scenario. 15,000 Gene troops surrounding the city, a bunch of loudmouthed civilian officials, and an army of guards who had never seen a real battle. I was up against the strongest military force on the planet. But I wasn't going to sit around saying it was over. A man faces trouble head-on. I will give my all, Your Majesty, Wang Si vowed. I patted him on the shoulder. His father might be a spineless traitor, but the son had potential. What about the rest of the army? I asked. Armor, maces, swords, helmets, arrowheads. Li Chong stepped forward. We have 100,000 sets of armor, 60,000 maces, 200,000 swords, and 4 million arrowheads. Show me the armor, I said. Sire, the armor is packed away tightly. It will take time to unseal the storage. I have plenty of time today. Li Chong hesitated. Perhaps Your Majesty would like to see the fire workshop first? The fire workshop was where the gunpowder weapons were made. As we walked, I felt a nagging suspicion. Why was it so hard to just look at some armor? I didn't push Li Chong further, but I kept my eyes open as we entered the workshop. A man approached us and bowed low. I have arrived, Your Majesty. What are your orders? No orders, I said. I just wanted you to join me on this tour of the Weapons Bureau. The man was Zhao Ding. In history, he was the greatest of the 4 famous ministers of the Southern Song. He was a master of internal affairs and could balance rival factions with ease. Right now, he was just a minor official in the Kaifeng administration, a glorified clerk who handled paperwork. I had kept the chancellor position vacant specifically for a man like him. Zhao Ding looked confused, but he didn't ask questions. Zhao Ding, come here, I called out. Look at this. It's a thunderclap bomb. I picked one up. The people around me flinched. Careful, Your Majesty, Li Chong shouted. What are you afraid of? It won't explode on its own. I handed the bomb to Zhao Ding. I've ordered them to make 160,000 of these. What do you think? Zhang Shai watched us closely. He probably realized I was testing Zhao Ding for a promotion. The number is vast, Zhao Ding said carefully. I don't know the inner workings of the Bureau well enough to give a definitive answer. There are nearly 10,000 workers in the Bureau's various shops, I pressed. Over 1,000 in this workshop alone. Answer me. Zhao Ding realized I wasn't letting him off the hook. In that case, the workforce is still too small. If you want to guarantee success, you should draft additional labor from both the military and the civilian population. I didn't smile, but I looked at Wang Si. Did you hear that? Official Zhao just gave you the solution. Draft people. I want a full execution plan on my desk tomorrow. 1 copy for me, 1 for Zhang Shai, and 1 for Zhao Ding. I want to see exactly how many people, how much money, and what support you need. If it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. Understood, Wang Si said. Everything needs a plan. Without one, a team is just a pile of loose sand. This was Project Management 101, and Zhao Ding was clearly a natural at it. I pulled a piece of paper from my sleeve. Wang Si, look at this. Can the Bureau make it? Wang Si took the paper. It was a rough sketch of a thick tube mounted on a 2-wheeled carriage. To a modern person, it was a primitive cannon, a redcoat cannon. To a man of the Song dynasty, it was a mystery. Your Majesty, what is this? Forgive my ignorance. It's called a fire cannon, I explained. It's cast from iron and hollow in the middle. Think of it like a bamboo stalk made of metal. A metal bamboo? Exactly. You put an iron ball inside and fill the back with gunpowder. The explosion creates pressure that hurls the ball out. The principle wasn't hard to grasp, especially since they already used gunpowder. They just needed a little push in the right direction and some time to practice. Wang Si nodded slowly, his eyes bright with realization. I understand now. I'll give it my best effort, Your Majesty, Wang Si promised. Don't rush, I replied. I wasn't going to force the cannon project on him just yet. I don't expect you to deliver this immediately. Right now, our priority is catapults and thunderclap bombs, things we can mass produce right now. Understood, he said. With the engineering task set, I turned my attention back to the bigger picture. I looked at Li Chong. Minister Li, let's go. I want to see the armor. Li Chong bowed quickly. Your Majesty, I'll have the armor brought to you immediately. No need, I said, already walking. I'll go see it myself. Li Chong's face flickered with a hint of hesitation. Your Majesty, the storage area is currently under renovation. It might be inconvenient for you to visit. I stopped and stared at him. Where is the armor kept? In the military equipment and armor depot, he answered. And the crossbows and blades. In the crossbow depot and the south outer warehouse, Li Chong replied. Lead the way, I commanded. I want to inspect them all. Your Majesty, is that wise? Why? I asked, my voice dropping an octave. Is there something I shouldn't see? No, nothing at all, he stammered, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. We arrived at the crossbow depot first. I walked through the rows of weaponry, inspecting the heavy siege crossbows and the famous divine arm crossbows. The Song dynasty's production capacity was actually staggering. Historically, their workshops produced over 16 million pieces of equipment annually: bows, arrows, strings, and bolts. Their assembly line system was centuries ahead of its time. On paper, they outproduced every other nation on Earth. They even had strict quotas: 8 bows every 9 days for a 7-man team, 5 blades every 6 days for 8 men. It was a well-oiled machine. Or it was supposed to be. After checking the blades and iron maces at the south outer warehouse, we finally reached the armor depot. Li Chong tried to stop me again, offering to bring samples out, but I pushed past him. I wanted to see the heart of the stockpile. I walked deep into the warehouse and randomly grabbed several sets of armor. Hang these on the wooden dummies, I ordered. I want them tested. The Imperial Guard stepped forward. First, they fired crossbows. The bolts slammed into the iron plates with a dull thud, leaving only shallow dents. The armor held. Next, they swung heavy blades. The steel clanged against the plates, failing to bite through. Finally, they used iron maces, the heavy blunt weapons designed to crush bone through metal. The armor buckled significantly, the leather cords holding the plates together straining under the impact. I felt a chill. This was mountain pattern armor, weighing nearly 50 pounds. Combined with a soldier's weapon, a Song infantryman carried almost 70 pounds of gear. Against this kind of heavy infantry, blades were useless. Only blunt force worked. That's why the famous generals of this era all used maces and axes. Go, I said, pointing to a different section of the warehouse. Zhao Ding, take some men and pick more samples. Randomly. Yes, Your Majesty. Zhao Ding moved quickly, his eyes sharp as he scouted the racks. He didn't just grab what was on top. He dug deep into the piles, selecting pieces from various corners. As the new samples were hung, Li Chong was practically vibrating with nerves. Jing Chao, my guard, stepped up with a crossbow. He aimed at one of the newly selected breastplates and pulled the trigger. Thwack! The bolt didn't dent the metal. It punched right through it. Zhang Shai gasped. He ran over, his fingers trembling as he touched the jagged hole in the plate. This iron. His voice was low and dangerous. There's something wrong with this iron. Test the others, I said, my voice flat. Jing Chao fired 10 more times. Out of the 10 sets, 8 were pierced cleanly. I walked over, grabbed a standard dowel blade, and swung it with everything I had. The blade didn't just dent the armor. It sliced a deep, ragged gash into the metal. I swung again, and the plate shattered like brittle glass. I threw the blade aside. The ringing of the metal echoed in the silent warehouse. My face was a mask of cold fury. Is our weaponry suddenly divine, or is this armor made of trash? Li Chong collapsed to his knees, his face hitting the floor. Your Majesty, forgive me. These are old sets. They must have degraded over time. Zhao Ding stepped forward, holding a piece of the broken plate. These sets were forged within the last 3 years. I checked the stamps on the inner lining while I was picking them. He looked at Li Chong. Explain this. Now. I don't know. Spare my life, Your Majesty. I truly don't know. You are the director of the Palace Administration of State Guilds. I roared, grabbing an iron mace and smashing it into a dummy. The iron armor disintegrated into shards. And you tell me you don't know? What use do I have for you? Li Chong shook like a leaf in a storm. Zhang Shai, Zhao Ding, Jing Chao, stay, I commanded. Everyone else, get out. The warehouse cleared instantly. I stood over the kneeling official. Tell me the truth. Or do you really want to die today? If you won't talk, I'll ensure your entire family follows you to the grave. Don't think for a second I won't do it. Mercy, mercy, Li Chong wailed. When I took over the department, I found these low-quality sets already in the inventory. I tried to report it, but Kai Jing was in power then, and we were at war with the Liao. No one cared. He was trying to blame a dead man. It was a smart move, but I wasn't buying it. Who did you report it to? I asked. I. Speak. I deserve death. I deserve death. Jing Chao, I said coldly. Drag him out and behead him. Wait. Li Chong screamed as the guard grabbed his collar. I'll talk. It was Prince Yun. Zhao Kai? He made me do it. I froze. Prince Yun? My own brother? Do you realize what you're saying? I know. It was him. Why? Li Chong's voice was a pathetic whisper. A standard set of armor costs 40 strings of cash to produce. These fake sets only cost 20. We pocketed the difference. I took a deep breath, but it felt like inhaling fire. A volcano was erupting in my chest. How many? We made 150,000 sets. 150,000. I paced the floor, my boots crunching on the shards of useless metal. The rumors were true. The Northern Song military was a hollow shell, rotted from the inside by its own leaders. Did you ever stop to think? I turned on him, my voice trembling with rage. Did you ever think about the soldiers on the front lines? They go into battle thinking they're protected, only to be slaughtered because their armor is made of tin and lies. Do you think their lives are worth 20 strings of cash? You parasites. You're eating this country alive. Your Majesty, please, calm yourself, Zhang Shai urged. Your health is paramount. We need proof of the prince's involvement. I looked at Li Chong. Evidence. Give it to me. Li Chong looked lost. I gave the money to the prince's people regularly. That's not evidence. I can't arrest a prince of the blood on your word alone. The iron. Li Chong blurted out. The raw iron used for these sets. It all came from the prince's private smelting plants. Zhao Ding shook his head. The quality of the iron is poor, but the failure here is also in the forging process. Using his iron isn't enough to prove he ordered the fraud. Zhang Shai sighed. Your Majesty, we won't get the full story in a few minutes. Let the Court of Judicial Review handle the interrogation. I didn't say another word. I turned and walked out, my silk robes snapping in the wind. Zhao Ding, I called out without looking back. Here, Your Majesty. You are now the acting director of the Military Equipment Depot. Audit everything. Every blade, every arrow, every plate of armor. Find out exactly how much of our defense is a lie and tell me what we need to replace it. Immediately. Yes, sire. And one more thing, I said, stopping at the exit. This case is massive. I want the Court of Judicial Review, the Ministry of Justice, and the Censorate to investigate this together. The Palace Guard will oversee it. You will assist them. Do you understand? Zhao Ding hesitated, the weight of the task visible on his shoulders. Your Majesty, I am a low-ranking official. I fear I lack the authority to command such powerful offices. You have my authority, I said, looking him in the eye. That's the only authority that matters. That was easy enough. To make things smoother, I told Zhao Ding he would also take over as the prefect of Kaifeng. Once he got the military equipment depot under control, he could step back from the daily grind there. I had originally planned to let Zhang Shai handle it, but he was too busy with the city's defenses. I couldn't burden him further. I accept your command, Zhao Ding said, bowing quickly. But Your Majesty, there is one more thing. Speak. The blacksmiths who forged that substandard armor. How should they be handled? I asked him if he had a plan. He suggested that many of them were coerced and stayed silent out of fear. Since the country needed skilled workers for the upcoming offensive, he proposed docking 3 months of their pay. It was a warning without losing the hands we needed for the war effort. Fine, I agreed. Do it. Zhao Ding left to start his work. Meanwhile, Li Chong was hauled off to the Ministry of Justice's dungeons. This case was massive. It touched everything from raw materials to manufacturing and management. But my priority wasn't just the investigation. It was fixing the problem. If my soldiers went to the front lines wearing that garbage, they'd be slaughtered. Still, I told them to dig deep. I wanted more corrupt officials caught in the net. I was running low on funds, and seizing the assets of traders was a great way to fill the treasury. When I got back to the palace and sat down, my eunuch, Wang Huaiji, approached me. "Your Majesty, the Emeritus Emperor sent word. He wants to see you." "The Emeritus Emperor? Zhao Ji, my father. Did he say why?" I asked. "He didn't, sire." I sighed. I knew exactly what he wanted. The Jin invaders had offered a peace treaty. The common people hated the idea, but the court officials were desperate for it. Their estates were outside the city walls. The longer the Jin stayed, the more their property was destroyed. They wanted to squeeze the peasants for tax money to pay off the invaders and make them go away. Since I had blocked their path to a treaty, they went to the only other person with power, my father. I drank some hot tea and headed to the Yinfu Palace. When I arrived, I found Prince Yun, Zhao Kai, already there. He bowed as I entered. My father, Zhao Ji, was dressed in Taoist robes. He looked pale, with dark circles under his eyes, the look of a man who spent too much time on vice and not enough on sleep. He was busy practicing calligraphy. When he saw me, his face darkened. "You've arrived," he said coldly. "Why did you send for me?" "I heard you killed 2 ministers." I looked at the paper on his desk. His slender gold calligraphy style was world famous for a reason. It was beautiful. Too bad his leadership wasn't. "I did," I replied. "You don't know how to be an emperor," Zhao Ji snapped. I didn't get angry. I just smiled. "Oh, please, enlighten me. You killed them. What will the other ministers think?" He glared at me. "They will think you are cruel and ungrateful. Who will give their heart to serve a man like that?" It was ironic, being lectured on kingship by Zhao Ji. History remembered him as a man who could do everything except rule a country. He was a genius artist, a poet, a master of many things. If he'd been born into a regular wealthy family, he would have been a legend. But he was the emperor. Under his watch, the court didn't just have a few villains, it was crawling with them. He knew how to play power games to keep control, but he had zero judgment when it came to national strategy or the economy. "It sounds like you have deep insights into governance," I said, my voice dripping with hidden edges. He put down his brush. "I was emperor for over 20 years, after all." He tried to put on a dignified, fatherly front. My smile grew sharper. "And in those 20 years, what did the world become under your rule?" The dignity on his face froze. His expression turned ugly. "I am your father. And I am the emperor," I shot back. "You think your wings are strong enough now?" he roared. "Tell me, did you come here to cry for those dead ministers? Should I send their severed heads here so you can perform a ritual for them?" Insolence. Zhao Ji nearly jumped out of his skin. "I am your father. How dare you speak to me this way?" Zhao Kai rushed over to support him. "Father, please, don't upset yourself. It's bad for your health." He turned to me. "Brother, our father is old. If word gets out that you've angered him like this, you'll lose face. What will the world think of you?" I looked at the two of them. Zhao Kai had always been our father's favorite. Zhao Ji had even tried to bypass me to make him the heir. Even now, they were a united front. "The Jin want peace," Zhao Ji said, finally getting to the point. "Why haven't you responded? Do you want to get us all killed?" I knew it. The dead ministers were just an excuse. "Is that why you called me here? To talk about the treaty? Did someone whisper this in your ear?" Nobody had to tell me. "I heard the Jin want to talk. Why are you stalling? Do you really think you can fight them to the death?" "Since you've abdicated," I said, "stop worrying about things that aren't your business. I will handle the Jin." I turned to leave. I was done wasting my breath. Clearly, the peace faction was getting desperate if they were using my father to pressure me. "Zhao Huan, what do you think you're doing?" my father screamed behind me. "I am leaving. Enjoy your retirement. Stay out of politics." Zhao Kai tried to play the peacemaker, following me. "Your Majesty, please. He is still your father." I stopped and spun around, my eyes boring into him. "Prince Yun, you have a lot of nerve speaking to me today. I was just at the military equipment depot. Did you know someone accused you of embezzling funds from the armory?" Zhao Kai flinched. His face went pale for a split second before he recovered. "That's impossible. I am a prince of the blood. Why would I steal such a small amount of money? You must investigate this fairly." "Oh, I'll investigate," I said. "Thoroughly." I walked away, leaving my father's screams of "rebellious son" echoing through the halls. Zhao Kai was a piece of work. A few days ago, he was shouting about attacking the enemy to look like a hero. Now, he was hiding behind our father to push for a surrender. It wasn't a contradiction to him. He was a coward at heart. His bravery was just an act, and the moment things got real, he went back to what he knew best, selling out the country to save his own skin. If I had listened to people like him, I'd be digging my own grave. I knew exactly why Zhao Ji had acted out today. Someone had been whispering in his ear. I had already executed several officials, and the survivors were running to the retired emperor for protection. It was a classic move. When Li Yuan abdicated in the Tang dynasty, his old supporters did everything they could to undermine Li Shimin. My father had only been off the throne for a year. His shadow still loomed large over the court. I couldn't just kill him. The risk was too high. If word got out that I had murdered my own father, my reputation would vanish overnight. In our society, killing a parent is the ultimate sin. It would destroy my legitimacy and hand everything to Zhao Kai on a silver platter. Only an idiot would take that bait. So how do I win? Politics isn't always about a quick kill. It's a long game. It's about building your own power until the other side simply withers away. Look at Li Shimin. He didn't just win because he killed his brother. He won because he built the empire. He had the best generals and the highest prestige. Even if he hadn't wanted to take the throne, his followers would have forced him to. They weren't fighting for a prince. They were fighting for their own futures in a new court. My mission was clear. I had to nurture my own faction and systematically dismantle the old guard. Once they were weak enough, Zhao Ji and Zhao Kai could scream and jump all they wanted. Nobody would listen. When I got back from Yinfu Palace, Wang Huaiji was waiting with a mountain of reports. The ministers had stopped using their secretaries and were writing to me directly now. They were all long-winded essays, but they boiled down to two things. One group said, "Your Majesty, we aren't the ones asking for peace. The Jin are. This is a rare chance. Please reconsider." The other group said, "The Jin asking for peace means they're exhausted. We should attack immediately." I started nodding off after reading just a few. It was all cliched, idealistic garbage. It proved just how corrupt and useless the bureaucracy had become. This ship was sinking, and it was full of opportunists who didn't know how to row. I pushed the reports aside and picked up my own pen. I didn't expect these officials to save the dynasty. I had to do it myself by maintaining public morale and keeping the people united. I needed the masses to understand the reality of the war so they wouldn't be swayed by these court clowns. On December 6th, a new article hit the streets in the Tokyo Daily. It was titled, "On the Initial Phase of the Songjin War." I wrote it to be objective, comprehensive, and easy for the average person to understand. I divided the war into 3 stages. The initial phase, where the Jin were strongest, the stalemate, where we would build deep defenses, and the final decisive battle. I laid it all out. First, I admitted that our old strategy of teaming up with the Jin to destroy the Liao dynasty was a massive mistake. I completely rejected the alliance conducted over the sea. Second, I pointed out the idiocy of thinking we could buy back our northern lands with money. The Jin were greedy. They would never be satisfied. Third, I addressed the peace talks. Diplomacy is useless without military strength. I called out the peace faction for what they were. Cowards who wanted to squeeze the common people for tax money to pay off the Jin so they could live in comfort. Fourth, I warned against the suicide attackers. We didn't have the strength to fight the Jin head-on in a massive field battle yet. We had to be honest about that. We needed to find their weaknesses, like their overextended supply lines, and use our strengths. Fifth, I criticized the handling of the first siege of Tokyo. When the Jin general Wanyan Zhongwang retreated earlier this year, we should have crushed him. Instead, officials like Tang Ku and Gung Nanzhong forbade our troops from attacking, essentially escorting the enemy home. It was pathetic. I told the people the truth. The Jin came back a second time because we looked weak. They were trying to use this siege to terrify us into a bad deal. They wanted us to turn on each other. My message was simple: stay united. They wanted a quick war. We would give them a long, grueling one. I warned everyone that any peace offered now was just a surrender. The Jin would demand our gold, our silk, and even our women. We couldn't give in. Finally, I gave them a roadmap. Yes, we would lose battles in the beginning. That was the price of 100 years of military neglect. The Jin cavalry would sweep through the north, but they couldn't hold it forever. As long as we held Tokyo, reinforcements would arrive. Our people in the occupied zones could fight as guerrillas, harassing the enemy's rear and cutting their supplies. The Jin will get tired, I wrote. The weather will turn warm, they will face a food crisis, and they will try to bully us one last time before retreating. Do not fall for it. I even predicted their next move. They would set up a puppet government north of the Yellow River to try and control the locals. The moment that article was published, the city went silent. The truth was out, and the game had officially changed. The article hit Tokyo like a lightning bolt. It caused a sensation I had never seen before. It wasn't just the commoners whispering about it in the streets. Even the peace faction leaders like Tang Ku and Gung Nanzhong bought copies immediately. My brother, Zhao Kai, even grabbed a copy and rushed it to the Yanfu Palace to show our father, the retired Emperor Zhao Ji. My father read it and scoffed. He called it absurd. He couldn't believe I had the nerve to go public with such wild theories. To him, I was losing the royal family's dignity. He worried about how the officials would look at me if things didn't go exactly as I predicted. Zhao Kai saw an opening. He told our father that I was becoming too reckless. He suggested that when the situation inevitably spiraled out of control, our father should step back in to stabilize the empire. He even claimed the officials were already missing the old days of my father's rule. Zhao Ji looked at the newspaper, his brow furrowed in thought. He told Zhao Kai to let me keep making a mess. He believed that by acting this way, I would lose the hearts of the people on my own. He didn't think they needed to lift a finger to get rid of me. I knew exactly what they were thinking. To them, I was digging my own grave. But while they were plotting my abdication, the officials Tang Ku and Gung Nanzhong were actually trembling. My article didn't just outline a strategy. It ripped their past policies to shreds. I had attacked them for letting Wanyan Zhongwang's 60,000 troops retreat without a fight earlier this year. I called their orders to leave the enemy alone nothing short of national betrayal. I completely invalidated every peace deal they had ever proposed. Even the officials who used to flip-flop between war and peace found themselves backed into a corner by my words. I had used the most precise language to define our history from the fall of the Liao to this second siege of Tokyo. I predicted the enemy's every move. For the people in the city, my words were a lifeline. Their confidence surged. By that afternoon, the Jin General Wanyan Zhonghan was inspecting his new catapults when his advisor, Shi Liai, rushed over. He was holding a copy of my newspaper. It had been delivered to their camp by one of my special arrows. Zhonghan laughed at first. He thought we were finally sending a surrender note. But as he read, his face turned dark. He immediately called a meeting of all his high-ranking officers. The atmosphere in the Jin camp was heavy. They weren't stupid. They realized my article was a perfect summary of the war so far and a terrifyingly accurate prediction of the next 6 months. It was a move they couldn't counter. It was like I was telling them, it's going to get cold, so you'll wear coats. It's going to get hot, so you'll take them off. It was an open trap. I was showing them my hand because I knew they couldn't change their nature. I wanted to mess with their heads. I knew Wanyan Zhongwang already doubted they could conquer us completely. By predicting they would set up a puppet state, I was giving the peace faction within the Jin military a reason to argue with the war faction. War is just an extension of politics. I wasn't just writing for my people. I was fighting a psychological war against the enemy leadership. Zhonghan tried to act tough. He told his men that my article was childish and weak. He insisted that only brute force mattered. He said the only way to prove me wrong was to take Tokyo. If they took the city, my words would become my epitaph. If they failed, my words would become their reality. Time flew. It was now mid-December. My commander, Gao He, reported to me daily on the city's food supplies and morale. I had to keep a pulse on the streets. Any spark of rebellion had to be snuffed out immediately. I checked in on my new intelligence unit under Huang Qingxi. He had 320 men now. I told him I would give him more. I was turning his group into something like a secret police force, my eyes and ears to handle special cases quickly. As soon as Gao He left, Zhao Ding arrived with a report from the military equipment depot. I was impressed. The Wang family had worked fast. In just half a month, they had already manufactured 360 new catapults. The counterattack was taking shape. That meant we were producing 24 catapults every single day. The progress on the heaven-shaking thunder explosives was even faster. We already had 70,000 units ready, averaging nearly 4,700 produced daily. This kind of military buildup was exactly what I needed, and Zhao Ding looked satisfied with the numbers. But my mind was on the corruption case. I looked at him and asked how the investigation into Li Chong was going. Zhao Ding hesitated before answering. The Ministry of Justice had finished their preliminary trial. They had identified 5 officials involved. Li Chong, a low-level manager from the Ministry of Revenue, Sun Ji, a registrar, Zhang Daoming, a minor official from the Military Equipment Depot, Wang Yuanshan, another registrar, and Lu Chong, a clerk from the Salt and Iron Bureau. I stared at him, stunned. They were playing me for a fool. A massive case involving 150,000 sets of armor, and after half a month of investigating, they only gave me 5 names? The highest-ranking man on that list was a 7th-grade official. The rest were bottom-tier clerks, 9th-grade nobodies. I asked about the Court of Judicial Review. Zhao Ding told me they hadn't even started. They claimed they were overwhelmed with other cases and sent one representative who conveniently caught a cold and stayed home on sick leave. As for the censorate, they were just sitting there taking notes for future impeachments rather than actually helping with the interrogation. I slammed my hand onto the desk and stood up, my blood boiling. I wanted to scream, but the words caught in my throat. They were laughing at me. They were trying to pin a national security scandal on a few sesame seed officials. A clerk from the Salt and Iron Bureau? He was just a guy who recorded ledger entries. You're telling me he masterminded the corruption of the entire military supply chain? They thought I was an idiot. Zhao Ding bowed, telling me to calm down and promising he would keep digging. I knew that if Zhao Ding hadn't been involved as the mayor of Kaifeng, they probably wouldn't have even given me those 5 names. They would have just let the whole thing slide. In that moment, I felt the suffocating weight of the Song dynasty's bureaucracy. It was a dark, rotting system. I asked about Prince Yan. I knew my brother was involved. Was there any new evidence? Zhao Ding shook his head. He had checked the iron supply. It wasn't sold to the military by Prince Yan directly. It came from a merchant named Wang Sun, who owned a smelting plant in Xizhou. This man sold massive amounts of iron to the state every year, anywhere from 100,000 to £500,000. In our dynasty, iron mining was a state monopoly, but we allowed private smelting to increase production for the military. However, not just any merchant could get a government contract. You needed a background. You needed connections. I asked who recommended Wang Sun. Zhao Ding told me the recommendation came from a man named Li Zhong. And Li Zhong just happened to be the head manager of Prince Yan's manor. When Zhao Ding went to the manor to arrest him, they told him Li Zhong had moved back to his hometown 2 months ago. I let out a bitter laugh. Of course he did. How convenient. I realized this wasn't just a corruption case anymore. This was a full-blown cover-up by the bureaucracy to protect one of their own. I decided to split the investigation into 2 tracks. I told Zhao Ding to let the Ministry of Justice and the Court of Judicial Review continue their sham trial. He wasn't to interfere with them anymore. Instead, I was creating a temporary special investigation office. I gave him full authority and assigned the secret police from the Imperial Guard to assist him. He didn't have to report to the ministries. He would report directly to me. Zhao Ding understood my plan immediately. By letting the ministries fail, I was setting them up. When Zhao Ding's special office found the real culprits, it would be a slap in the face to the entire judicial system. It would give me the perfect excuse to purge the incompetent officials and overhaul the government. I told him to investigate without fear. I didn't care who he found. I wanted names. I wanted executions. I wanted their assets seized. I was done waiting. By giving Zhao Ding these multiple roles, I was grooming him. I needed my own people in power if I was ever going to change this empire. Meanwhile, on December 20th, a man named Dronzer arrived in Xiangzhou. He was the commander of the Hebei Volunteer Army, and he had come to see the Grand Marshal, Zhao Go. Zhao Go was only in his early 20s, the 9th prince, known as Prince Kong. Just a month ago, I had sent him to negotiate peace with the Jin invaders, but Dronzer had intercepted him in Xizhou. It was a lucky break for the dynasty. If the Jin had captured him then, the royal bloodline might have ended right there. Zhao Go stood up and greeted the old general. He told Dronzer that he was recruiting a massive army to save the capital. Tokyo was in grave danger, and he wanted Dronzer to be his vice-marshal, leading the troops to resist the Jin. Dronzer accepted immediately. He was a man of absolute loyalty, a brilliant general who, in another life, would win 13 consecutive battles against the Jin only to be ignored by his superiors. He had one question for the prince. When would they march south to save the city? Xiaogo just sighed and stayed silent. His advisor, Wang Boyan, spoke up instead. He painted a grim picture. The capital was completely surrounded by 150,000 enemy troops. The most feared Jin commanders, Zhonghan, Zhongwang, and Wuzhu, were all there. The situation was dire, and the prince seemed hesitant to move. Dronzer looked puzzled, his brows furrowing as he stared at the men in front of him. He asked what any of their excuses had to do with marching south to save the capital. Wang Boyan kept a polite smile on his face, but I knew he was cursing Dronzer as an idiot in his head. He told the old general that the situation was stronger than their will and that they needed to plan for the long term. Dronzer didn't take that well. His voice boomed through the room, startling everyone. He was 67 years old with hair as white as snow, but his energy was fierce. Wang Boyan actually stumbled back 2 steps in fear. Dronzer shouted that the capital was in mortal danger. This was about the survival of the dynasty and the entire world. He didn't care if the Jin had 1,000,000 men. As ministers of the state, they had to be ready to die for the cause. Wang Boyan tried to calm him down, claiming they weren't refusing to go. He argued that the other relief armies were still on the road and the Grand Marshal's orders had only just been sent out. Dronzer wasn't having it. He demanded a specific date. He wanted to know exactly when they would move. Xiaogo finally spoke up, shifting the focus. He asked how many troops were currently available. He told Dronzer that the priority was organizing the soldiers they already had. Xiaogo claimed he had 10,000 men in Xiangzhou. Dronzer replied that he had 8,000 in Xizhou and could recruit thousands more. Dronzer stopped looking at Wang Boyan entirely. He turned to Xiaogo with raw excitement in his eyes. He begged the prince to give the order to move south immediately. He proposed a brilliant plan. They could meet at Lidu on the banks of the Yellow River to cut off the Jin's retreat. It would cause total panic among the invaders. He suggested that while he held the river, the prince could gather more reinforcements and set up a fortified camp at Chanyuan. By positioning their blades right at the enemy's flank, the Jin wouldn't dare to launch a full-scale assault on the city. If the invaders tried to pillage the surrounding areas for food, our army would be right there to strike. Wang Boyan kept smiling, but I could tell he had already rejected every word Dronzer said. He patronized the old general, calling the plan wonderful, then claimed the prince was too tired to continue. He tried to dismiss the meeting. Dronzer lost his patience. He reached out and grabbed Xiaogo's sleeve with a firm grip. He told the prince that the emperor was waiting day and night for rescue. Xiaogo jumped, visibly terrified by the sudden physical contact. Wang Boyan rushed over to pull Dronzer away. He scolded the old man, telling him to let go at once. He claimed the prince was feeling unwell and warned that if the general disturbed his recovery, they wouldn't be able to lead the army at all. Dronzer took a long, deep breath. He looked at them, his face full of helpless frustration, and finally let go of the sleeve. Xiaogo tried to sound diplomatic. He told the general he understood his urgency and ordered him to return to Xizhou for now. He promised to send word the moment a plan was finalized. Dronzer didn't say another word. He turned and left.